This question is for all of you on the panel. It came out of a discussion, Barbara, about something you said on the Charlie Rose show, that the more you go on the set, the less it means when you're there. As producers, when do you go on the set? And tell us about what you do when you go on the set. Our film students want to know. Barbara first.
Well, when I said that, after doing a lot of movies, I realized that there were 3 times of day that it was really mattered. One was in the morning. Sorry. One was in the morning when things were being set up and people were arriving. The other was at lunch when people actually had time to sit down and talk and also discuss what happened in the morning, what work they got done, what work they missed. And the last time was just before wrap, when you sort of did your, you figured out, did you get your day? Were you going to get your day? Should you work more overtime? Should you come back the next day? And I found that the more time I spent in between sometimes, the less I just became a piece of the furniture, you know. I was just sitting there watching and making notes, but I didn't really feel that I was doing anything that I couldn't do better from the office, helping plan the day before, the next day, and just generally doing cost reporting and stuff like that. So, I mean, I also, I worked with the same director. I worked with a lot of the same people, and at one point, I'm really allergic to the smoke. And it got to be a joke whenever they wanted to get rid of me, they would turn the smoke on. And it's like, yeah, okay, she's leaving. So, I mean, that was my feeling at the end. There are those 3 times during the day when you can really make a difference and really have an input.
Brian?
Yeah, it's kind of an art. It's something I learned over time. And a big part of it is about learning to read a room and learning to read the people you're working with. There are some directors who need you there all the time, constantly, and there's some directors who forget your name halfway through the movie. You always want to be close enough that they can sort of break the glass in case of emergency, but not so close that they feel like you're suffocating them, typically. So I've worked with some directors, again, who want me around. Other directors would prefer not to have me around, or what I represent, not me as a person. I'm able to sort of divorce my personality from my position and learn to not take it personally that I might not be needed in that moment. It's more that my position isn't needed. It's not that they didn't like me or they didn't want me around, but it's good to always feel useful. If you can read a room, then you're gonna know the moment where you are not being useful. So if you're supporting the director and that's all you're doing, you're supporting what the studio wants, what the director wants, and you can table it in such a way that people don't feel like they're being put upon by you, you'll get a lot more than if you're always running around trying to put out fires that aren't burning, it's something you develop over time, I think. So.
Declan?
Breakfast and lunch. Those are the. Well, Brian's answer so accurate. I spend a lot of time on set, but there's set, the kind of inner circle where the camera is, and then there's the fringes. And as a physical producer, I insert myself to that inner circle and then I retreat from it. But I'm often on the fringes. Because the job is that, Brian was saying, you are there to support the director, the filmmaker, and their creative process, but they know in part that you're there as the responsible party to the money, to the finance. So there are very few directors who really want you there all the time. I think at least my experience is, they want you to be there when there's a problem, to be in service to them, and then they want you to retreat. That's my experience.
Barbara, you said, and this is for everyone, but you said that, quote, movies work well when the audience has an emotional connection to the characters in a film. It's not intellectual, it's emotional. Can you talk about that a little and your advice to our student screenwriters in the audience who are writing their first screenplay?
Sure. I mean, I think that It's about character and story. And there's so many other things that you can put in that, are additions and are good additions. But if you don't draw a character that people really connect with and tell a story that's really interesting, it doesn't matter how much special effects you have, it doesn't matter how brilliant your photography is or how great your set is, you're going to lose your audience. And I've even heard directors talking to actors, and I've seen it as actors start intellectualizing about, well, my character would do this or my character would do that. And and they were all intellectual reasons. And the fact is, you say, no, it has to come from in here, and it's about what the character would just instinctively do.
Well, 50's already started to write screenplays a little bit. Here's the thing about rap. Rap music and country music, they're both story. That's really what it is, it's story. We make rap is like hard, right? We give those people who rap, we give them a lot of credibility for being a lot of times really masculine. But if you think about that, rappers are just poets, they're just bards, they're just the same thing as the strolling troubadour back in the day. It's the same thing. It's an observation of life put to a beat. So if you're already observing life, whether it's your life or someone else's life, you're already doing the thing. That's writing. Writing is, I look at this person and I turn that into words. So you're already doing it. It's a question of beginning, middle, and end, right? It's a question of beginning and middle. And 50 already had that. When I met him, he already knew how to create characters. 50 Cent is a character. I don't actually hang out with 50 Cent. I hang out with Curtis Jackson. 50 Cent is a totally different person who I've never met. Because that's a person he created. That's an idea he created. When you create a persona, that's what you're doing. You're creating an idea of a human being. So he was already good at making characters and really thinking beginning, middle, and end. You already have that. I mean, I don't know what kind of music you make, but creating songs, writing songs is about that. And it is about structure. This is what you already have on people. When you were talking about getting your thoughts together, I was saying you free write until you have an outline. Then you write your outline, then you write your script. Don't try to write a script out of your free writing. You can't do that. You can't skip that step. When you are doing, verse, bridge, chorus, you're already working with structure. You have what you need to transition. It's just a question of stepping back and not thinking, oh, I can't do it. You can. You all can. There is no question about that. Don't let anybody tell you something different.
We have one question in the back. Yes, sir. Nice and loud.
I can't see your face. Can you?
No.
I've been raising
There
my
you
hand
go.
for a
I
minute.
got you. Yes, yes.
Hi, my name
What's
is
your name?
Eliane Dominguez.
Eliane.
Ellie. And I just want to say one thing first, is that I just love the idea that you used new faces. Because I watch a lot of movies and shows. I never seen the characters that's empowering other shows. So that's good.
Ed Sullivan. That's what I was talking about.
Ed Sullivan, right?
Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan.
And also, when you say that everyone wants to see themselves on TV, do you mean that you want people to relate to your show? If so, do you speak by experience, even though the characters are fake, made up? Do you kind of speak from experience in a way? And if so, any particular scene?
Okay, so I'll explain. I'll answer that. It's a great question, fantastic question, and it's a lot of answers. I'll try to answer it quickly, but here it goes. I think people like to see themselves in two different ways. So when I see black people on television, to some extent Latinos now too, I get excited. Why? Because it's like me. The second thing is when I see someone who is a single mom, who's new at being a single mom, like I am, that feels good. When I see someone who has a dead father, like I do, it feels good to watch someone else go through that experience. When I see someone else who feels lonely, afraid, has a difficult decision to make, has to maintain a certain level of decorum when other things are going on inside, I feel good because it's like me. Some of those things are universal, some of them are not, right? The universal thing is we all have a one who got away. There's always someone who you loved who you didn't keep, who you didn't get to keep. Everybody can relate to that to some extent. That's part of what works with power, right? Ghost lost Angela, and then he got the opportunity to get her back, and he didn't care about the rest of his life. He wanted to get her back, right? that was a terrible idea, man. But he did it anyway because that's him. That's Ghost. He does it anyway. Sometimes I do things anyway. Sometimes we all do things anyway. That's what's universal. People like seeing themselves on screen. Personal experience. Yes, a lot of experiences that you see on that show are things that I've gone through. I do not sell drugs. I have never sold drugs. I'm not from Queens. I have, there's a lot of things I haven't done. I've never killed anybody. But I've talked to people who have killed people, and I've talked to people who are from Queens, and I've talked to people who have sold drugs, and I've talked to people, and I was a journalist first. Listen, this is the most important tool in writing. All of you who are writers, go to Starbucks in the next 2 days and listen to people talk. Don't write just from your own head. All your characters will sound the same. They'll all sound like you. Go listen. Sit in an open space here. Listen to how different people talk. I've gotten questions from all of you, and you all talk differently. Everyone should speak differently. That's the specifics. But in terms of my experience, I was in love with someone, my husband, who it didn't work out with. It didn't work out, and there were moments where it was like, oh no, this isn't going to work out. Okay. Then I take that and I put that in the show. You know? I'm a mom. I have to tell my daughter, 2 days ago, I had to say, Mommy is leaving again to go to New York for 2 weeks. And she says, Mommy, don't go. Okay. I can take that feeling that I have when she says that, and I can put that into the show. It may not look the same way. It may be Kanan having that feeling about Tariq going back somewhere. It might be someone else having a different feeling, but I can put that in the show. So yeah, I definitely, there's so much of me in the show, and this is the last thing I'll say. I'm sorry, this is such a long answer, but I think it is important for those of you who are writers. Every character you write has to have something in common with you. And specifically, I'm going to talk to the men for a second. The reason I get this question about female characters is that men have a hard time imagining what it's like to be women. We don't have as hard a time because because the world kind of works in your direction. So we kind of have to watch movies where the main character is a male all the time, and it is easier for us. For you, it is harder to write women a lot of the time. And what I will tell you is when you create a female character, this is your shortcut. Give her something that's like you, and then you will be able to write her. Whether that means that she has a little sister or a little brother that she can't spend time with, or she has a mother that she disappoints, or she has whatever it is, or she has too many jobs, or whatever it is, make her relatable to you. At 3 in the morning when you have a deadline, you have to go in here. There's no one to call at 3 in the morning to say, how would this character act? It's just you. So you have to build everyone you write from the basic ingredients of who you are. And I say that to everybody, but specifically to men, if you're writing women characters, make them relatable by making them relatable to you first. And then you're cold.
I started off doing various film-related internships and ultimately got a job working at Steiner Studios in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And I worked there for about 5 years, and while working there I met various production managers, including Gina and Eileen, while they were doing the HBO miniseries Mildred Pierce. And I was fortunate enough to jump ship and join them while they started Girls. And I was Eileen's assistant for the first few years and worked my way up to becoming an associate producer on the show.
Could you talk about the importance of having an agent, Eileen, and wanting to go back into films yourself, your experience on Todd Haynes' Mildred Pierce and working with HBO? How important was it to have an agent?
On the production side, you don't have to have an agent at all. If you're a writer, it's pretty important to have an agent or a manager, only because when you're trying to send your work out and get people to read it, a lot of people won't read it unless it comes through an agent or a lawyer or a manager. And that's really a practical consideration of the world we live in, which is that people are afraid of getting sued, which just means that, you say, okay, you sent me a script, I read it, and I go make a show without you, and there could have been 10 other scripts that were the same topic, and you can get, there's a lot of litigation. So in terms of being a writer, yes, it's pretty important to end up with an agent or a lawyer, who can sort of, streamline the process. In terms of what we are, which is all pretty much below, I mean, we're above the line, but we're line guys, or line gals. So no need to have an agent at all. I mean, I would say the biggest thing is just hard work, and really paying attention when you get that entry level job, when you get the big break, to not only do a really good job at your job, but really just, as Joe I think was saying before, look around, listen, really try to understand what other people's jobs are on the crew, and then think about, if you're really enjoying it and really think this is what you really want to do, think about, okay, whose job do I want next? I know that, the way I ended up a producer is going from being, a parking PA to being a PA. I actually detoured into the accounting department and then detoured out of the accounting department to production manage. And it was really, I did a little time in locations as well. And it's really about figuring out, okay, when you do a job, you go, yep, you know what, I really like this, but I think I want to do some other thing. So I spent a lot of time being a production assistant and got all the days that you need to join the Directors Guild as a second assistant director, and then decided, you know what, I don't think I really want to be an assistant director. I think what I really want to do is be a production manager and a producer. It's kind of like, when people train to be doctors, you say, well, how did you become a doctor? Aside from a lot of school, when they're an intern in a hospital, you're sort of, you see one, then you do one, then you teach one. And it's very similar in the film business of, while you have to do a really good job at the job you got hired for, but at the same time, you want to kind of look around and say, okay, what's my next move?
Very nice.
Much more important than having an agent.
We have a question from our studio audience. Please say your full name and what school you're from.
Hi, my name is Natalie Newman. I'm also a student at Ithaca College, and I'm studying television writing, and I was just wondering what advice you would have for students who are looking to create or produce their own shows, especially shows that maybe have controversial storylines or characters.
You'll get both of us
I
on
have a
this one.
short, quick answer, which is just that a lot of, well, I don't know if it's, I would say that I see a lot of people who try to go in straight from college and then be a writer on a show, and that seems to me, I don't want to squash anyone's dreams, but maybe that's a way to start, but to know that if you really want to be making movies or whatever, there's a lot of people who I see who come in, start working in production and learn how it works and then make connections and then start again. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't go out starting to, get your pilot made and join script competitions and that they exist and all those things, but to be prepared to have the sort of passion that would allow you to, just knowing that you want to be around and that you're going to spend this time, and to not get discouraged. It's just, that's what I would say.
I would agree with Gina. I would also say it's really evolved over all the time that I've been in the business, which is that in the olden days, there's a real barrier to entry of getting your own stuff made, because you had, film was very expensive, the equipment was very expensive, and so it was really, really a hard thing to make, and then how do you distribute it? Now, basically, if you have an iPhone and you have a computer,
High maintenance, the girls,
I mean,
yeah.
so there's my version where I, started watching Parking Spaces, and then all these years later, I have kind of like the fun job. But you know what, then there's the Lena Dunham version, and when she was in college, she just took a camera and made films in college.
Downtown
she
Divas,
did
Delirious Downtown Divas.
Delirious Downtown Divas, which are like these 3-4 minute things that she did with her friends that are, there's no high production there at all, and got them up on the web. And so you shouldn't be discouraged by that. I mean, a lot of this, especially writing, it's a lot of practice. When people come into the office all the time and they say, well, I want to be a writer, and they look at me like, I want to be a writer. I'm like, well, do you write? The people who are really writers, they write every day.
And they're making their content. They'll find a way to make their content. So, there's I guess what I'm trying to say is there's two different ways, and you've got to figure out how to balance both. I mean, and figure out if you want to get your foot in the door and see what it is, and then step back out and figure out a different job that's going to maybe let you write for a little while. I mean, you're young, so,
You can also there's sort of big and little. I would say that, not on the writing side, just on the production side, is I would work on these really big Hollywood shows, movies, and then in between big jobs, I would do, tiny little jobs where I would, work for free or work for, almost nothing, because I'm like sort of low on the big show. I'm low man on the totem pole, and then on the tiny little show, it's like, okay, you can practice being the boss.
I mean, the
and then
good thing you
back
have
to the little
going
show.
for you is you're at a state university, correct?
City University.
City University, okay,
Are you,
great.
you're at Ithaca?
I'm in, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, but it's still
Half
state.
yeah.
They're at State, we're at City.
Yeah, but is
Yeah.
it SUNY?
It's SUNY and CUNY.
No, it's
No,
not.
no,
SUNY.
no, Ithaca's.
Oh,
Ithaca
Ithaca.
College.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, the good thing about State University kids is that you can probably, when you're done with college, get a job and afford to hopefully not have as much debt and or maybe a little less debt, that you can make some life choices.
Yeah, but I would say there's a lot of value in there's a lot of value in just doing it. It's funny because if you know how hard, like if you've been around as long as we have and you know how hard it is to make a movie, it almost stops you sometimes from just going out there and making a movie. There's a part where if you kind of don't know much, you just have a really good idea and you just kind of go do it. You learn along the way.
I mean, Joe's still making movies in between our shows. He made a really good short. He's writing right now. I mean, he's, you have to spend your time off and your time at work figuring out how to get, right?
There's
I would
also
say.
like a huge community now. I mean, I'm sure you have friends at Ithaca, and then when you're back in the city, do you live down here or you live?
No,
up
I'm
there?
upstate.
You're upstate. Finding people you're in school with and like-minded, and once again, it doesn't take all the equipment it used to take. So it's really the strong thing is it's really just about the writing. I mean, that's the key ingredient. And for those of you who aren't writers, it's really sort of finding people who are writers, and then you want to make their stuff.
Brings us to the next union question for Chad. And Chad, this is a three-part question. What is Local 700? And also, where do you work, and do you go to an office every day?
Yeah, okay, sure, Jeff. Local 700 is the Motion Picture Editors Guild, and it covers a bunch of specialties, people who edit picture, people who edit sound, music editors, re-recordists, and some of the other functions related to that. At one point, it covered post-supervisors as well. And their office is in downtown Manhattan, and they have an excellent training room there for the members who can listen to all kinds of seminars and get their hands on some of the latest technology in terms of compositing visuals, Flame, Inferno, all of the Adobe suite, things like that. So it's really, it's a group that has a natural affinity in terms of how picture and sound work together, music and picture work together. I don't go to an office every day. I go to a cutting room because at one point film was actually physically cut, is what it's called.
They still call it a cutting room.
And they still call it a
Cool.
cutting room. These cutting rooms are in various locations around the city. Sometimes they are located by where a lab might be that's processing the footage from being shot on set, or in a part of the city that's got attractive commercial real estate rates, but might not be so convenient to get to. Other times I work from my house, which is really convenient to get to if you're already there. And so my setup, though, wherever I am, is comprised of pretty much a Pro Tools system running off of a Macintosh computer, and a monitor or two or three, and some speakers so that I can play things, because very often, as opposed to some of the sound specialties, I'm playing a lot of stuff for a director or for an editor to review. And the third part of your question, if you would remind me, Jeff.
Well, I think we've covered where do you work and do you go to an office? And I think this is a good lead-in for Richard, because Richard, we need to know three parts also. What is Local 52? And what is a motion picture studio mechanic, and what do they do?
Okay, so I am a member of IATSE, that's International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, IATSE, Local 52, Motion Picture Studio Mechanics. Within our field, there's a lot of different locals that have jurisdiction over different crafts. Many of them are under the umbrella of the International Alliance, the IATSE. Local 600, the camera operators and the ACs. Is your local IATSE?
Yes, it is
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
most of these entertainment organizations, Local 1, the Broadway house, that's also IATSE. In some cases, there may be other organizations. I used to be a member of NABIT Local 11 at NBC. CBS has some IBW people, but most of the entertainment stuff throughout the United States and in Canada is IATSE, International Alliance. So Motion Picture Studio Mechanics, our group is several specialty crafts. So I'm an electrician, Sparky. Grips, carpenters, who are sometimes called shop craftsmen. There's a lot of special nomenclature and lingo in this business stuff. But let me see if I can mention all the ones who are in Local 52. Electrics, grips, carpenters, sound, video, medics. And did I say props? And props. But it sometimes gets a little confusing because the prop department is both people who are handling props and people who are doing dressing. Should I take a moment to explain the difference between dressing and props?
Absolutely.
So, prop department oversees that stuff. That's objects and actual materials. But if it just sits there, it's just set dressing because you see it in the picture, in the mise en scene. Is that the proper term?
Mise en scene,
Yeah, mise en scene. So it's there. But as soon as the actor or the talent touches it, bottle of water to drink, telephone to dial, table lamp to turn on, it becomes a prop. And because it's used and there's continuity with the script supervisor, which is different local, that's why that's a separate group of people who handle the props as opposed to the dressing. The chairs are dressing unless I move the chair or throw the chair. Then it becomes a prop. So those are some of the people who are within Motion Picture Local Studio Mechanics, Local 52. And what do we do? I mean, I guess I take it for granted because I've been doing it so long that the different crafts that I just described are self-evident, but electricians deal with electricity, providing for the lights, and we interface with the camera department and the director of photography. The grips work in concert with the photographic department and the electric department to shape and mold the light, also to place cameras and build platforms and mount cameras, camera movement. The set carpenters, they build stuff, they're construction. Sound people, fairly obvious, they record the sound. The video people, similar type of thing, although video playback, other specialty things can get involved with it.
And by the way, that's a great lead-in for the next question for Chad. You work as a music editor, and can you take... You has a really interesting story how you got your first job, and now I want to ask you, what have you learned the most about yourself while being a PA? Sam?
I'd say the amount that I could work without any sleep because it's long days. It's very long days. It's sometimes it's supposed to be 12, but it sometimes goes past that, and you get sometimes not a great turnaround. So you'll be back to work 10 hours later. But everybody is going to set and working the same amount as you are. So you have to be on your game as well. So that at first was hard for me to understand, but it's made me a better person because I can work as hard as I possibly can and achieve as much as I can. So,
Joseph?
From being a PA, I learned that I have a lot of patience to deal with people. Not so much like the crew, but like people who are just trying to get home. That's your main job as a PA, is to like just stop traffic and, you know, don't let people walk into the shot. And some people will listen to you, some people won't. So that's, you know, you just learn to have a lot of patience with people and just learn to work with people and just be humble and, you know, leave your ego at the door. I learned that from myself, yeah.
Boris?
Yes, you learn that people do work 14, 15 hours a day. That does not include the commute. You learn, as a PA in a big job, you learn how a high-end job, you see these amazing sets, you see all these technicians, all coordinate, you see how it's done on a high-end level. And if you want to make a good film, get up at 6 a.m. Don't call your friends at 4 p.m. and say, hey, are we going to do this today? So getting up early is a big part of getting the day going.
So, Sam, I want to start with you. What was the hardest part about being a PA on some of the jobs you've had, and what was the best part of the job?
So like I said, I feel like the hardest part for me was definitely the long hours. It's hard to, because when you're staffed on a film, that's your entire month. You're there day in, day out, and even on your days off, you're resting for the next week. So it's hard when you have friends you want to see and you have family you want to see and you have a dog at home, and that was definitely the hardest part, the long days. But the best part was the people that you meet on set, because since you're there for so long, you meet these people and you're with them every single day. You start to create a bond. There was an occasion where the production team, the G&E team, and the camera team, we all did 3 movies back to back with each other. So we all became very close, and it's just those type of bonds that are great.
Joseph?
Yeah.
What was the question?